I don't complicate it. There we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Richard, can we get a thumbs up that you can hear us?
Thank you, Mr. Deloria. We hope you're feeling better or well, or moving in the right direction anyway. Very good. Well, I note the presence of a quorum. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. To get started, we've got an agenda. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the agenda. Are there any suggestions for changes to the agenda, or can we move ahead with that as where we'll go? Hearing none, I move to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's the agenda. All right, move on to brief announcements by authority members. None from myself. Waldo,
None for me.
Bill, Trevor. You, oh, sorry.
Not an announcement, but just a question. As we look at taking the minutes, it would be helpful, I think, from a data perspective, to track virtual attendees and when we have matters from the public, whether they're in person or virtual, just from a feedback on our it's a broader kind of county initiative to try to track how we're doing with that kind of engagement. So unless that's a problem, it would be helpful to. And I think our administrators of the meeting can help with that too.
Fantastic. Jim, anything?
Nope.
Donna?
No, thank you.
Very good. Congratulations to our Board of Supervisors members for their election to chairman and vice chairman of the Board of Supervisors. May God have mercy on your soul. All right, we'll move on to the public comment section. This is the opportunity for folks from the public, either online or here in the room, to speak to the authority for up to 3 minutes, ask us questions, tell us things, basically do anything that's not profane or inappropriate. And we'd love to hear from anyone who has something to say. So if you're attending by Zoom, please use the raise hand function. And if you're here in the room, use the physical raise hand function. Let's see what we've got.
We have no hands raised in the virtual, in the Zoom.
And you guys look quiet as well. So we're going to move on from that segment to the minutes. We have minutes from September 28th, October 26th, and December 6th. Thank all those who contributed to the minutes for getting those in front of the group at this time. Has everyone had a chance to review those and provide any comments back? Have there been any substantive comments?
Yeah, there were some.
Then I'd like to move to approve all 3 sets of minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that is approved. That'll bring us to our old business section. Let's look at VADI 2021. Mike, can I turn to you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Rich Schulman is here, so if he could come up and join us, we're going to go through this relatively quickly and then have time for questions. So thanks, Rich, for being here. Everybody's met Rich Schulman, right? Yeah, okay. All right. So construction is continuing in all of the remaining areas, and that includes Stony Point Road. And they're actually doing some work over in Campbell and Cobham, which is very impressive, and we're excited about making the March 31st deadline for construction along the main roads and up into the arteries. So things are going well there. Just as a reminder, that is the goal of DHCD with VADI, is to make sure that there's connectivity going through the arteries and through the main roads. As far as connecting people, comes after all of this construction is complete. That's not to say that some of our prior projects we're still taking orders on, and we have a lot of people who have already connected. So in that sense, it's been a very successful project, because people in the rural areas have been able to connect with fiber when before they had like 3 megabit DSL. So there's a lot of people who are sort of stuck in the middle with 40 meg DSL or 80 meg DSL, and they're all clamoring, when do I get my fiber? So we're hearing a lot from people who see that there are rural neighborhoods getting fiber connectivity when people who are closer into town don't have that luxury, but it's not really a luxury, is it? It's definitely a requirement for modern day life, and 1 gigabit service is the gold standard. So that's why we're here. That's why we're trying to get this thing through as quickly as possible. We've had a tracking document that we've been going through for like probably 3 months now. And it's getting updated on at least a weekly basis, and we just got a new one just now. So what you'll see when you get to the take rate is some of the things that you see as pending, they're getting done today, yesterday. So a few of the activations that you see as pending on the update that you'll see are actually active today. So we're connecting people with fiber as the project goes through, and it's on an ongoing basis with a lot more crews helping us make this happen. There are some lingering issues on our list. Things like people who've had temporary lines brought in to make sure they get connected, and they're waiting for those temporary lines to get buried. And there's also what I would call the complicated installs, where there's either a creek crossing or you have to go through another person's property. Just some difficult situations that Brightspeed is managing and keeping in contact much better than before, thanks to Rich's help making sure this is a successful project. So we really feel that the ones that are lingering out there are being handled well with Rich's help, and these folks will get their connectivity done or their lines buried as soon as possible. So a lot of that going on. I guess we can go to the next slide or have Rich talk a little bit about what's going on there.
We can get to his section in a minute. This is the most up-to-date take rate, and as Mike was mentioning, one thing that's important to note is as more crews have come on, these numbers are changing quickly. And so if you compare from the November update that we provided on your printout, you'll see a lot of areas that had lots of pending last month are they're much fewer, and the number of older project areas that had lots of pending, those are being addressed. And the bullet on the last slide about these issues being addressable with time, there were issues, there were process issues that were getting in the way of accomplishing the goal of getting people connected. The corrective action plan has set us on a better course such that the remaining issues, as I said, they're addressable with time. We're going to be able to, the crews that they have out there are going to be able to get to all of these customers in as timely a manner as they can. And we've been discussing the temporary drops. That was one of the changes that was made as part of the corrective action plan, is to shift to temporary drops as the primary means of getting people connected rather than waiting for a buried drop crew. That has led to a big decrease in the number of missed installations. And it means that these customers are active now. We are hopeful, we're not quite there yet, but we're hopeful that Brightspeed is going to be able to get these temporary drops buried in a timely fashion. Rich will share in a second. They have additional crews doing the work, but it is a balance of making sure that you're addressing people that are waiting for their drops and people that have already received their drops but are waiting for those lines to be buried.
It looks like most of the work since the last report has been Taylor's Gap. But presumably those folks will, spread out into some of the other areas that Italy will love as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about work, you're talking about the backbone work.
Look at service and active connections.
Yes, yes,
Taylor's
yes.
Gap has seen the biggest swing.
Yeah, because it's the latest one in. So yeah, that and Rosemont should be moving pretty quickly. We got Rosemont on there?
Taylor's Gap is part of the reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So those two areas are big. And as soon as we turn on Murray, which is hoping to be able to make the announcement tonight. We were out there yesterday. We're so close.
Yeah.
But
Talk a little bit about that.
yeah.
So just
So these are in order of how they were deployed, just so you know. So we started with Jones Mill, Old Garth, and then went to Tillman, Snow Hill. That was back in,
January of
last year, Jones Mill started up. So
some questions on the report. and then I guess, the word, so. There's no way to discern in this report what are temporary versus permanent, is that correct?
That's correct.
On this, yeah.
All right, so then I have a question around the temporary process, which maybe we'll address, so I'll hold off on that. In looking at hard copy of the report from November 28th, the passings, I think for the same areas worth 755, which looks to be the same as this one. So although I see there has been activity in converting orders, pendings, and actives, there's no new passings.
Passings is total project scope.
No, I understand.
Okay.
So my interpretation is we have not done any additional passings yet.
The remaining project areas.
Yeah, we'll
Stony
add-
Point and Campbell Cobham, nothing's changed since the last time we updated you. So Stony Point. Work continues across that project areas. There are 3 tranches there. And there is progress in getting a trunk line from Polo Grounds to service that section as well as the Campbell and Cobham section.
So work is underway, but not to the point where we can credit passings. in
That's
this
right.
report.
That's exactly right.
That
So,
that is on the deadline of completion by the 31st.
Yeah.
Of March.
so the goal would be next month, when you see the same chart, we'll probably have to go to 2 pages.
That's
Because of, yeah.
It's work for the older guys.
And I guess so kind of related to this chart, there are some of the data is exactly the same as we saw in November from, well, not, I guess, from an ordered service perspective. Would we anticipate, an expansion of that? I know that's what we hope for, and the grant is tied to passings, but we're still hoping for a higher take rate. Is there still continued communications from Brightspeed to try to have awareness and kind of market the opportunity?
Oh, yes, because I think our target, do you recall what the target is?
50%.
50%, yeah, so we are expecting to get, I think, 800 customers within a year out.
Yeah, exactly. After the project ends within the following year. So March 31st is when the clock is ticking and you have to hit that 50% rate.
Thank you. As you reported next month, being able to tie back to what we saw this month.
Yeah, good idea.
Well, it's nice to see the change.
Okay, so I'm just gonna do some updates here, a lot of stuff on here, busy slide, but let me kind of hit some of the highlights. The corrective action plan, so the bullets that you see there are from, and I'm gonna look at this screen so I can talk to you all at the same time. The bullets there are kind of the key bullets from the last update that we did at the last meeting. And so just hitting on those again, I think we've found that the simplified process has worked so much better for us. So the good news is now you don't see complicated ordering systems. You don't see people that are, are they getting some stuff installed, some not? It's made it so much easier. The flip side is we've been able to get a lot of people up and running with temps, which is great because they're getting service right away, but getting the crews to bury the temps has been what the real issue is. So I mean, I guess it's a good problem to have, is we have so many people coming in placing orders and we're able to get temps and get them in service immediately. So that's kind of where the issue for us is right now, is the crews to bury those drops. And that's been the issue. We have, I forgot the number of crews that are out there now, but we brought 2 more crews in, but here's the problem we're having. There are no other crews in Virginia that we can bring on board. So we've actually had to go out of state to bring crews from additional crews from out of state. So the latest 2 that we've got have been tremendous, very experienced folks, but we had to bring them up from Alabama and then put them in a hotel for 6 nights. And then we're having them work 6 days a week while they're up here to get temps, a combination of temps buried and those buried drops where we haven't been able to get in and get the buried drop done in a timely manner. So those folks that's where they're concentrating. old temps that have been out there a long time, and then people that have had where we have to do buried drops that have been sitting for a long time. One of the things that folks have asked us is, you know, they're seeing some people in some areas that are getting buried drops done, and it seems like they're getting done before other areas are getting done. Part of the issue for us is kind of a scheduling thing. So if it's in the north side of the county that we're doing something, and then, you know, if you technically went and you said, okay, let's go in order from oldest to newest, you'd be bouncing all over the county and you'd be spending all your time driving back and forth. So we're trying to group things, and that's what they're good at. They're good at scheduling to make sure they're trying to group things in some areas. So you might have somebody that jumps in line and gets their buried drop place earlier, but it's because they're right in an area that's being grouped at one time. So that's kind of what they're trying to manage in the process there. I think we've done a better job, and we on the webinars, we spent a lot of time going over the process for folks. And the reactions that I seem to see, because I read the Q&A that's coming. So I think in just the Forum 3 that I've done so far, the Q&A, much fewer questions about confusion on the process now. I think it's pretty straightforward, easy to follow. And your system of doing the monthly webinars is just tremendous for helping people understand that. Again, as you know, I got beat up initially for it, but I think everybody's good with it now. Is not trying to guess when the launches are going to happen and then disappointing people, trying to set the expectations. And Murray is a great example. You know, we've got that one area. We were out there yesterday and we saw it, just that one small area where we've hit rock. And I look at it, I said, it's such a small area, but that's what's holding up Murray getting launched. And, you know, I would have loved to have said today was going to be the day, but then I'd have all kinds of people calling tomorrow saying, why can't I order my service? So, you know, as much as I hate to do it, I like to say, let's wait until we're sure we're ready to launch. We've got all the testing done. They've done all of the rest of the testing that needs to get done, except for that one section that they can't test. So hopefully once we get this last section completed, and it's a fairly short section, but it's through a lot of rock, then everything should be able to roll and get that area launched. The other thing, now that I've been here, this is month 4 for me. I was initially kind of concerned of what the company was going to allow me to do. I was afraid I was going to get saddled with a bunch of other stuff, which I told them I was not something I wanted to do to come back, and they haven't. I just do Virginia. So it's been tremendous for me to be able to focus on spending time working on issues. Yesterday I was out, we did the site visit with DHCD, morning doing that. And then I went on 2 installs myself just to kind of see what's going on. 2 of the ones that have been outstanding for a while. Wonderful, wonderful people. Again, the techs are the rock stars. When they get out there, the customers absolutely love them because they know what they're doing and they work real well with the customers. So I think that's been really good. But for me, I've had a lot of time to focus on the harder issues and get involved when something seems to be falling through the cracks. Again, what I'm still trying to do is I'm looking for issues where I look in 2 or 3, and if there's the same problem that's happening in 2 or 3, I'm like, all right, what's going on here? And if I can find the root cause for that and solve that, maybe stop some other problems from happening. But we also have one guy who's Terrence, who's dedicated to getting back real quickly to these guys on the issues that come up. So if I see one that looks like it's okay, we missed something, they can get it taken care of, that's fine. But if I see a trend going on with something that's happening, then I can dive in and work a little more on that issue, which has been good. And again, the additional workforce I hit on as well. Next topic we'll hit quickly is the you all should have a copy of Bill Hanchey, who's used to be my direct boss. He's now 2 levels up from me, but I talk with him every week, sometimes multiple times a week. We held a meeting with all the VPs to talk about what the status of the project is, because I'm beating on the construction people and on the operations people constantly for how do we make things better. On the construction side, again, everybody understands what the deadline is. We're all working hard towards it. I don't hear concerns from anybody saying there's an issue with getting this done on time. I mean, there's actually probably a buffer built in to make sure that we get it done on time. The only issue we have had is one railroad crossing that affects 22 locations, I think, in Campbell.
Yeah.
And so what we've done there is, instead of waiting for the crossing to happen, we're on the other side of the crossing, getting everything in place for those 22 customers, so that when we get the crossing taken care of, we're good to go and we can just get that completed. There's a big battle going on right now in the General Assembly over railroad crossings to try and speed up the process. Thankfully, this is one crossing, and as soon as I came on board and I saw what the issue was, I contacted my connection at CSX, and they've been helping us through the whole process. So we actually got the permit checked to them like 2 days ago on Monday, and they got us the approved permit. So now we just got to get the flagging and everything scheduled. So really good that part of the pressure, I think, of what's going on at the General Assembly has meant they're really interested in making sure that this gets done right when everybody's looking. So I'm saying to everybody, let's get all this done quickly while the railroads are under some pressure to get the crossing done. So that was that's honestly the area I was concerned about, was that railroad crossing. Audits, I'll talk about audits in just a minute, because I threw a couple of slides on here that I think you'd be interested to see. The drop burial timing. So here's where I don't like giving this message, but here's kind of where we are. We're 60 days out getting temps dropped, buried, and getting those buried drops done. And so I think what we would like to do, and I think this is what we plan to do, unless there's a big concern with that, is tell customers, give them the expectation. Look, if you don't want a temp, if you can't stand having a temp there for 60 days, because that's how long it could take us to get that temp done. If you don't want that, we'll give you the option to be able to just do a buried drop. So that kind of helps them understand what's coming up. I mean, and I like to think, people aren't mowing their yards now, so maybe it's not quite as big of an issue with having a temp line there. And just tell them that's how long it's taken us to do those right now, and giving them that option. So trying to give them a little more control.
All right, just to clarify, the option is 60 days to wait to have the improved connectivity. Right? If you
Right, to do a buried drop with.
do a buried drop.
So we could give it to you today, but if for whatever reason, it's completely your call. You don't want that service today with the buried drop and having to look at a wire for 60 days, and you want to wait and say, okay, I'm fine with just
I
waiting.
just wanted to clarify, and then the 60-day, is that an on average across the?
Yeah, it's probably on average. So we've got these two new.
It's not a hard and fast contractual, we'll do it in 60.
No.
Some
that's-
are longer, some are shorter.
But that's, I mean, that's where we,
When is it? Calendar days, business days, what 60 days?
probably calendar days.
Okay, which is 3 months.
Yeah.
Or
About
calendar
2
days,
months.
2 months, okay.
Yeah.
Not-
And the goal, of course, is with these 2 additional crews, and we're still looking to see if we can bring in more crews to help out, especially if we see, so the good and the bad news is, if we get a flood of people that are placing orders to like 80%, all of a sudden now we've got a huge number of temps that we're putting down that need to get buried. So what is better for us is getting more customers signed up, but at the same time, it causes more work for having to get those lines buried. So that's kind of where we're looking there. The last one is it sounds, well, when I heard it at first, I was like, I can't believe we're not doing this already. But with the transition over with the company, if you've had to deal with the systems, and I have, they're still not fixed yet of getting everything so that when you call in, you get to the right place. But one major step that we just took, I think the 1st of January, was if you call into the customer service number now, and you have your phone number is on your account, and it recognizes you as a fiber customer, it gets you immediately to the right people. And I say that because I've tested it myself. I've gone in with some customer numbers that I knew were fiber customers. I put that number in, it says, or when I call, it says, we recognize that number, off I go and go right to the right fiber people, as opposed to getting tossed around to, the copper side and other places. So that, and I think that's helped a lot too, to get people to the right place. The next thing I want to talk about quickly, and I don't want to take too much time, is the audits. So busy slide, but let me just tell you what this is. First is, at the end of each project, we have an audit that goes out where we go and we look at everything that was done on the project. So you'll see, and this is our check on the work that our contractors are doing. So I know that's been a concern for folks is, are we just having people go out and build it and then we don't really care about what happens? We have folks that go out and we look at each of these sites and we come up with a list of corrections that the contractor needs to go out and make. And we don't pay them until they get these things corrected. And then, so this is just a sample of one from Garth Heights. We've got 2 more that have been done. And each of these, as we get completed, we share and we actually submit these with that monthly report to DHCD so that they can see these as well. And then if you go to the next slide, this is just when we do these, the picture, we send actually these pictures go with the audit. So these go back to the contractor. So we say, okay, here's the description of what we found wrong, and here's a picture, and here's what you need to do. And we're going to hold you to go back and making sure that these things get fixed before you get paid and the project gets done correctly. So I think we've done, do you recall which the 2 I've given you since these?
Garth Heights and Gilbert Station.
Gilbert Station, and then there's 1 more we give you as well. But anyway, we've got 2 that are in the works. But all these will get the same, every project area will get the same. And then once we're done with the complete project, we do an overall project review as well. So there'll be 1 more big review that gets done. But I just thought it was important for you to see that a lot of folks think we just having contractors build things and then we don't go back and check them. And we actually have a very tight process to make sure they do what they're supposed to do. And we follow up.
I'm glad to hear about the audits. I had someone working on my satellite dish a year ago. That was all well and good, worked just fine. And one day my DSL didn't work anymore. My DSL didn't work anymore because the guy working on the satellite dish had disconnected the ground line from both of those services that were used in common. One had vampired off of the other. And so there was no ground, and lightning strike nearby took out that and several other expensive pieces of equipment in my house. So it's nice to know someone goes around and checks these things after the work is done to see that it was done properly.
That's kind of my summary of what's going on. I think.
Any questions for Rich?
You presented in terms of what others have told you. I just want to ask you, do you feel good that this work is going to be completed within the contractual deadline of March 31st?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Good. Yes.
Not on body,
Okay.
we have sort of 2 offices. We've got our broadband office, Albemarle Broadband Authority, and we have our broadband affordability and accessibility office. So not on body, which is bringing in new. Still need work done on the other side, which is existing customers with the old DSL lines. The reliability remains low. So I have 2 systems because I can't rely on Brightspeed to be consistent on one.
So what I've said there is we actually have a program going where we're looking at copper as well. So what would be really helpful, we have our own way of looking at our metrics, but I've gone out to each of the counties and said, you give us the areas where you think there are some reliability issues and we'll go and look at those as well. And so if you want to pass those along to me, I can have them.
I will say the numbers are declining, and I think Michael and Jason can confirm that. I mean, from a year or so ago. But many people on the copper line still get to see the flashing blue light as opposed to the solid green. Now, it's not as unreliable as it was before. The outages are more infrequent and they're more sporadic.
Yeah.
But I think system-wide, y'all still need to be working.
And we actually do recognize that, and we actually are required to tell the SCC what we're doing about it. So that's why I've gone out. I literally sent an email to every single county administrator out there and said, you tell me what areas you're seeing issues, and we'll make sure that we look at those.
Can your
as well.
system not identify when the signal is interrupted?
Not in a DSL situation, not most DSL situations. The fiber we can test, and there are some modems that we're able to go and remotely check on, but in general, we don't know, unless there's been a report of, an accident or something, we won't know if there's been an issue with the reliability. So, one of the things we'll do is we will look at, one of the criteria we'll look at is how many repeat calls are we getting? How many out of service calls are we getting? And that's one way that we can measure those.
And in regard to that, there's an email that we just got the other day. People will call and it takes a really long time to get through. And a lot of times the person who answers the phone is just going through sort of a predetermined checklist, not really listening to the customer, which adds another layer of frustration because you've got interruptions with your service and not exactly the most efficient customer service process for them to be able to give a response.
We've just completely given up as of maybe 8 months ago. It's just like, tell the kids you can't play outside if it's pouring. Also, sorry, you can't watch that show because the DSL's down. And they say, well, what are you gonna do about it? There's literally nothing I can do. When will we be back? I don't know. Tonight, tomorrow, I don't know. But I don't even call our top connection speed now these days is maybe 15 megabits. We pay for 25. Upload has never exceeded 1.4.
Yeah.
Maybe pay for 3. But I don't even call. There's no point. There's no point. I get some very earnest person in some other country who maybe at least with Century, like I'm driving with Brightspeed, but same folks.
People in my
There's no
area
point.
all have Brightspeed. And many have, like I have Verizon Wireless MiFi, or they have T-Mobile. Because they can't rely on the system. And what you're telling me is that Brightspeed is either incapable and or unwilling to do something to improve your ability to know when the service goes out, rather than relying on customers who get very frustrated to have to continually try to call in. And go through that.
And I can tell you, it's not unwilling, but it is incapable in some areas of being able to tell when you have an outage.
Okay, and what can Brightspeed do to improve?
I'll take that back. I don't know of an answer. I mean, I used to have 12 states I was responsible for. I don't think there is an answer. There's a solution other than creating a network that allows to have those two-way communications like the new networks do.
Yeah, it's really great though, when you do call in and the recording tells you repeatedly to get online for fast.
Oh, yeah. That's a kick in the chops.
But the other thing I'll say too is, I mean, I can't do 1,000 of them, but I personally can check on them as well. And I'm perfectly willing to do that. I think that guys will tell you I'll do that, and I do it for other counties as well. I'm absolutely willing to do that to help people. We shouldn't be having to do that. I shouldn't be having to do that. But I deal every single day with calls from counties with a customer outage where I go to the tech and say, okay, tell me what's going on here. And, it's a mouse that was in a pedestal that took out 3 people on a road in Rappahannock County. And we didn't know until we got the outage and then sent somebody out there and found the mouse in the pedestal. So,
I would ask that y'all continue to try and find a way to be able to identify on your end.
Yeah.
Because people do just give up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Anything else for Rich?
We've got, just to update you guys on, my clicker's not going, on timeline. There we go. The corrective action plan from, November, at our last meeting, from October, at our last meeting, we provided the response to the corrective action plan, and updated some figures. And yesterday, DHCD came back out for a second site visit. And this was one of the locations on Murray Lane, actually on Broad.
Yeah, the left is Murray Lane. Murray Lane is where they're continuing the build. So when it launches, there's going to be quite a new intake. Retriever Run is also part of that. So there's going to be a lot of people who will be signing up. What's on the right is what we saw at Broad X Road. And this one section is what's holding up launching of Murray Lane, and the rock there is just really thick. It's probably like 9 foot of rock that they're trying to locate an existing telecom line so they don't cut through it, but they're going through with shovels and a backhoe and lots of work that's going on there. So DHCD saw all of this and felt comfortable that it's being managed appropriately and things are moving along pretty well on this particular area. It's not the first time that Brightspeed contractors have run into rocks, so we're not thinking it's going to slow the thing down so that we don't make any headway. But things are moving in a good shape. So the DHCD was happy with the outcome of the site visit. What they have to do now is they'll go back and create another letter of findings, and then they'll send that back to the Broadband Authority for review. One of the things they mentioned during what's called the desktop audit was that for all of the remittances that come in, we haven't had a remittance on this project yet, meaning a request for payment. So, we're still holding payment on this particular project. They want the Broadband Authority to approve all requests for funding. So as things proceed,
DHCD?
yes.
We have no contractual obligation for that.
Well, that's one of the things that they asked for. So I'm just repeating what I was asked to
Do you
do.
expect them to put that request in writing? Or
Well, I
is this
hope it'll
verbal
be in the
request
letter
the
of
whole thing?
findings. Yes. I
We'll
hope
look
it'll-
forward to seeing it.
Okay, very good. So that's the outcome of the DHCD visit. Yes.
Could we ask our attorney, Mr. Gloria, to comment on that?
Richie, did you catch that?
I did catch that, and Mike had briefed me on this a little bit. And I told him at this point in time, I'd like to reserve comment because I thought it might be something that would be more appropriate for a closed session discussion.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, we move on.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Rich. So Body 22, I just wanted to introduce Corian and Lori. Said it right? Very good. Both these individuals are from TJPDC. Just to keep they are the manager of this, but we're a big participant. I mean, ABBA is sitting there. We also have Gary Wood online. So he's online if we have any questions for him. The Make Ready work is continuing in the AEP and REC areas, so that's going well. Haven't had any other update than spring 2023 for this, and repeating what we talked about in the December meeting. There's a new tracking page for Albemarle that people can go to. We are receiving a lot of questions and comments about how long is this going to take, when am I going to be served, and fortunately it's easy for us because we're just sending them to the Firefly site to register and then referencing the project tracking page for Albemarle. The one thing that we have had feedback on, and we're hopeful to hear back from Firefly soon, is people would like to know which of the polygons on the map itself. There's a
Right.
bunch of RISE things, and they just want to know which of the project areas, because other counties, the project areas are defined. So they'll actually put a name next to what the project area is. So I think that would be one benefit that
There's
would go
not quite
forward.
enough detail on the map to figure out, are you in this one or that one?
Right. So I'm going to call an audible a little bit on what I'm about to say next, and this is entirely, my negligence, I guess I should say. The Broadband Authority did a really great thing, and it was a while ago. Richie's help, the finance department's help, and the economic development office with the EDA's assistant. We put in what is called an incentive agreement with Firefly to deliver to their civic members in Charlottesville and Albemarle. Things have been going really well with that, and we're close. So Gary, I wonder if you might give us an update on how things are going with your civic members. I don't want to steal your thunder, but there's been a lot of work going on that people sort of overlook. This is another project that's going on in the county, and I think it's worthwhile Gary giving us an update on Red Hill and Whitehall and the other civic members. So since the Broadband Authority was part and parcel to this project.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you giving me a few minutes to give you a quick snapshot. Y'all have already been through an extended meeting and you still have more to go, so I'll try to make this really quick and high level. And I sent just a simple email along to Mike that's not a real formal report, but hopefully he'll get a chance. I think he's going to share it with you. It'll have some of the same data, so you don't have to write down all the numbers and things. But Whitehall, our Whitehall substation, which covers areas from just east of Crozet all the way up through Free Union up to Greene County, has about 1,450 locations. we have 860 pre-registrations, so a 60% take rate, just as we started making final connections, and we started those in the last few weeks. We'd like to have moved a little quicker, but it took us about an extra month and $50,000 worth of extra work, because we also ran into some rock doing a bypass to avoid a railroad crossing that we thought was going to take longer. But railroads seem to be a common theme nowadays. But we did get Whitehall up, everything connected, and the whole network is together, and we're connecting folks now. We may have 40 or 50 that we've connected the last few weeks, but we got a few service drop crews putting those in, and we'll work through those others who are waiting service up there who pre-registered. Red Hill, we have had completed, including putting in temporary light and splicing the area that we don't have a final connection because of a railroad crossing. Norfolk Southern Railroad crossing, I have been personally involved with since October. Obviously, my involvement hasn't led to a lot of streamlining. Today, I saw again that they told us again that everything was in and that we would be scheduled soon for flaggers. And I'll pass along information again. I've sent Mike a little bit. We've tried many different approaches with Norfolk Southern. We are working on a bill through the General Assembly, and have had a lot of support from a lot of different parties to try to put up some guardrails and require that railroads make decisions within a reasonable time frame and for a reasonable cost. But we won't get into that today. That last 200 feet is our holdup at Red Hill. And as soon as we can get that crossing scheduled and put the last piece up so that we have a permanent light connection to the hut, we'll have to test some of the splicing again, but we'll be able to take off with that. That's about 465 homes. We've got 270 of them have signed up for service. That's about a just under 60% take rate. And there are a couple of subdivisions along Old Lynchburg Road that are part of this area that already have fiber. So almost 60% take rate when some folks already have that option is pretty good. And then down at Schuyler in the corner of the county is the last little piece. We have a piece there that's part in Nelson County and part in Albemarle. It's about 370 total locations, and we've got 200 people signed up for service. That's about a 55% take rate, and there is some fiber already down in that area as well. So we're happy to see that type of take rate. Generally, and by the way, we'll start drops in the Schuyler area within the next week or so. We just finished getting that spliced up right at the end of the year. That one was a little delayed because we're building a new substation, and Appalachian Power is building a new substation at Schuyler, and we're building one right beside Appalachian Power. Because it's a new location, we had to build some extra facilities into where the hut is setting at that new location, and that took us a little longer, but we're ready to start connecting folks down there. So 370 passings down there, 200 registrations. Any of these areas, we expect to pick up another 5 to 10% of the homes in the area as we start making final connections. It seems like with word of mouth and seeing our Firefly trucks roll in, we typically will see more people connect as we build out. So we're going to end up with some pretty high take rates in those areas, like we do across most of Albemarle. We've got, I think, about 1,350 roughly connections in Albemarle right now live, out of probably 1,900 locations that have the option for service. And those are rough numbers. I could get those more firm if you wanted. So we're excited about the CVEC piece. We're wrapping that up about a year early. We had planned to finish it in 2023, and we have all the fiber up as of the end of last year, and we'll get all of those folks connected within the next few months, putting in the service drops. And then we have a lot of work with the body area. And as Mike gave you an update, we're expecting to get in, start building fiber right at the start of March. The make ready work from Appalachian Power is moving along pretty well, and they intend to be finished that in February for that first piece of the body program in the APCO area. Dominion still moving on its middle mile build, working in the little Rappahannock area next to Whitehall. That make ready is complete, and we hope to be in there later in spring, maybe starting to do some fiber construction. So working a lot of different areas, and excited to continue working with Mike, who is by far the best local county broadband guy, and working with our partners at Thomas Jefferson Planning District. They've done a great job, and we just have a lot of work, so we got to get going.
Gary, this is Bucky. I have two things. First, over the holidays, I had occasion to talk to different people who have Firefly, and I kept hearing the same thing back from them. They love it. Which brings me to the second thing. I feel like Dominion is not moving on the schedule I would like them to move on at Albemarle County. Is there anything to be done about that?
Well, you're certainly welcome to talk to Dominion, because Dominion's schedule is Dominion.
Yeah, I know.
So I was just on the phone with them today. I will say that I think they are trying to move quickly, and on the engineering and field work side, they have done a lot of work, and that's the piece that you don't really see. But they have done a lot of work and have most of Albemarle County complete. In terms of the actual construction, well, they still have to have formal approval to roll this into their rate base. That's part of their middle mile program. And so the filing will go in this year. They're actually taking up the work before the filing, which is something we've seen them do. And they told us that they've done in other areas. So, so I think they're trying to move where they can. I think they are working really hard, and I'm probably speaking out of school here because it's their project, but trying to make sure they get all the resources they need. They have a lot of projects also. And as you heard Rich Schulman from Brightspeed say earlier, the resources are getting thinner to find in terms of fiber construction people. So Dominion has some folks that they've used on their project so far. I think they're trying to find the right numbers and get to the right speed to complete everything they'd like on the schedules that their ISP partners would like to have them. And we have given them the 2023 date that we'd like to have Albemarle complete. There's about 130 or 150 miles of construction just for Dominion and Albemarle, and then we'll branch off of that with more, but they have a good bit of work in Albemarle to do. So I think they're trying, and they've made a lot of progress, kind of the behind the scenes stuff. But certainly every chance you get when you run into Ed Diggs or some of the folks from Albemarle, feel free to whisper in their ear. Keep going.
They truly are the backbone of our project. So, but thanks so much for tuning in. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Gary?
Gary, this is Waldo Jaquith. I just want to tell you, a few months ago, I was catching up with my friend Mike Bird. It was at Connexia and has been for a few years now. And when I reminded him I live in Charlottesville because we worked together a decade ago, he said, "Well, you must know Gary Wood." So yes, yes, I do. And he had nothing but good things to say about what y'all are doing as innovators and leaders regionally, and then apparently in some regards nationally, in rural broadband through utilities. And I just wanted to let you know that your reputation precedes you there. And I found that real encouraging.
Well, thank you. Mike is doing a great job for them. He was a real asset when they brought him in on the software side. He's I've worked with him a couple times. Very bright, obviously. So I appreciate that he had nice things to say. I'll have to buy him another beer the next time I see him.
Donna?
Gary, this is Donna Price. I just wanted to commend you for that editorial in the paper the other day. It was really nice, and appreciate your your action on that.
Well, thanks. There is quite a coalition of folks who are trying to move the ball along so that we can set those reasonable standards for the time to get a railroad crossing. And Red Hill, I could go back through it, but we first applied for the Red Hill permit in 2021. So we worked through 2022 and we're hoping to get crossed in 2023. We're asking for a 30-day turnaround in the bill. So then $20,000 and 15 months later, we're hoping to actually get it complete.
Is there anything else for Gary? Well, thank you again, Gary.
Thank you.
Right. On. I think it's still me. And Lori's here to help us with this one, but if we want to ask her any questions, we have an open application through TJPDC for body 23, which is the next round of body. And 24 will be coming soon. There's no indication other than it's the same time frame. So 24 will be submitting applications sometime in August, as we always have. So 23, we're still waiting for possibly a February announcement. So hopefully in the month of February, we're going to know whether or not this award will happen.
But we're waiting for a February announcement only because we've run out of January, right? I mean, we have no idea when the announcement's coming.
I'm glad you caught that. Yes. So yeah, that's where we are with the 23 application. So it's going to help Firefly fill some of the holes that you see on this map. So anything in yellow will be filled in.
Do we know when the federal monies will hit the state?
I don't know the answer to that question. It was talked about at the Broadband Advisory Council, but it could be as early as June.
Yeah, so I was hoping it might turn up in the next body go round.
That's right. It's going to be a complicated process of figuring out whether it's 49.7 million or part of the BEAD allocation.
Right.
So if it's part of the BEAD allocation, the body round will be much more robust, meaning more projects will be funded for 24. The only challenge there, and it's a good challenge because we have the ARPA requirements for 22. So we're going to learn how to, and we're already learning. Lori's doing a great job with this, frankly. We have ARPA reporting requirements, and those same reporting requirements will be part of the BEAD process, similar to them. There may be some slight changes, but so that's the good point about how this will hopefully, dovetail into one another.
Given the significant oversubscription for body 2023, if
Yes.
things don't work out in our favor, there may be another at bat come
Right,
next year,
exactly.
so.
Great point, Chair. And I think that's on the next slide. Yeah. So just to update you, this is from the BAC, and we sent the Broadband Advisory Council meeting. And we sent the slides around just to give you some perspective. I mean, there's 300 million in funds requested, and all of these are valid projects. I mean, people over the years have become adept at making sure that they're submitting fundable applications. When we first started the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative, there was a lot of learning that had to happen. So some project applications fell short. Now it's like everything that comes into DHCD has value and scores at the same level. So we're just running out of funding. With only 49.7 million available, 300 million in request, the chair is exactly right. All of those applications that went in with 23 are likely to be resubmitted. I'm being the negative Nancy here, but are likely to be resubmitted again as 24. With possibly some additional locations based on the additional need for everything to be at 100, or 110 at minimum. So the speeds have changed. So that's changed a lot in all of this. The minimum speed requirements for your application are now 110. They could move up in 24. We're yet to see what those requirements are. But exactly right. Whatever's not funded through the 23 round will likely, be resubmitted for 24. And because the BEAD funding will be available, will also likely be funded.
And honestly, at this stage, it probably wouldn't slow anything down to be funded a year later.
Correct, because there's so much work going
Yeah.
on. That's a good analysis. Yes,
Okay,
yes, sir.
Do those numbers in the counties mean anything?
The little numbers of the actual, they tried to show the project areas. It's a little bit, how can I explain it? Really good question. But yeah, the numbers are the actual projects, the 35 projects.
Okay.
So they're not sitting on the right green spots.
Right. I get it.
Yeah. So Wise and Lee is the number one. That's not how they're ranked, by the way.
Right.
So don't get nervous. Albemarle and the rest of the counties up there are 15. They should be one if we were ranking them on value and
so move on to the treasurer's report.
we can.
Your treasurer.
No change in budget from last month.
You know, I knew you were gonna say that, but I'm minded to think that it might be nice to have one number, one column for, you know, previous report, what the number is. And then we could all just at a glance know, don't need to pull that, you know, don't need to pull this for discussion. We can just let that go. So just a suggestion.
I just want to give Lori another shout out. I forgot to mention, I think you see it on here. They've actually done a great job and have put together their first remittance request to DHCD. DHCD approved it, and part of that process is now that gives them the ability to invoice the Broadband Authority. So we have processed an invoice, and you'll see that on the
We'll
next.
see a change. next
Yes,
year.
you'll see it. You will see a change. Exactly.
Put the funds to use.
Yeah, great, great detailed work from TJPDC to make it easy for us to approve the invoice and process it through our procurement office. So great teamwork getting that through. All right, I know we've taken a lot of time.
I think we're up to the broadband office.
Yeah, maybe we can keep this we've got a lot of information in the slides themselves, so we'll ask Jason to kind of move it quick.
Yeah, so lots of activity in the last few months. And we'll run through them really, really quickly. As long as my clicker works.
I can go.
So no big changes on ACP Bridge. We were able to, as we previously announced, launch with our first provider partner. And because of the timeline, that means that we are actually approaching our first invoice from them. So we're really excited to find out what kind of an impact we've had in terms of the number of households that we've been able to help with this program. We are still planning a launch event. The winter weather and the holiday season made it difficult for us to coordinate, but we are eager to schedule an event with our launch partner. And we're also looking at signing up new providers to participate in the program. The major barrier that we're hearing is that a lot of our ISPs are actually in the middle of updating their billing software. And so in the midst of a billing transition, they don't want to complicate things by adding codes. But we're hopeful that they're going to be able to get through those and we can get them signed up. We previously mentioned the work that we've been doing with the Regional Digital Equity Plan Work Group. And as part of that, a grant application that we were getting ready to submit. The work that we are. Not do it. I got you. I might have already updated. The work that we are doing. Next. There we go. The work that we are doing for the planning activities is in cooperation with the University of Virginia School of Architecture's Masters of Urban and Environmental Planning. And we are actually taking their qualitative methods and quantitative methods cohorts through this planning exercise. So the qualitative methods is going to engage in 3 to 4 focus groups with different cohorts in the community to ask questions about what the barriers that exist in the community for accessing broadband. The quantitative methods course is going to take the survey data that we've been collecting, in particular sentiment survey and speed test data, and use different statistical analysis techniques to give us some demographic analysis to correlate, for instance, educational attainment with broadband availability and other broadband barriers. This is work that's going to be ongoing past this initial cohort, but we're excited to give it a first effort and proving out the model using this cohort. Any questions on that? And then the grant. So previously I had a much more complicated slide that showed the complexity of the grant. I wish that our grants team was here so that way I could offer them a round of applause because they were incredibly helpful in helping to navigate this grant process. What we ended up applying for is the ACP Navigator pilot. This is a pilot program, so there's no funding attached to it, but it gives us access to the national verifier. This is the tool that is actually used to determine eligibility for the Affordable Connectivity Program. And this would improve the effectiveness of our outreach and our in-person enrollment assistance because it takes the time to enroll in ACP from days to minutes. We also applied for the ACP outreach grant. This proposal is for hiring 2 to 3 digital navigators who will be embedded with our community partners. They will be doing outreach and enrollment assistance. And then we're going to be holding a large marketing effort to include direct mail, digital display ads, text messaging, in-person canvassing, events. I forgot to mention the events on the slide, and the development of an ACP landing page. And they're going to engage those community organizations, our community partners, to make sure that the outreach efforts are properly targeting the relevant communities. Can we go to the next one?
On this, it's so much a broadband question, but with that Navigator pilot and the outreach, is that for all programs, not just the connectivity programs, any program the county offers?
No, so these programs, this funding is tied directly to ACP. So one of the goals with this grant is to kind of prove out the Navigator model, because in order to fulfill the grant requirements, these navigators and these outreach efforts have to be focused entirely on ACP. It kind of ties one hand behind our back because it means that we can't at the same time have them offer ACP Bridge or other relevant programs. What our hope is that once we've proven out the model that digital navigators work, then we can work with our community partners to actually find opportunities for them to fund their own digital navigator programs, which would then encompass all programs that we would want to include. Thanks. The total funding request was not modest. It's $730,000. The application review is in 3 phases. An administrative review that assures that the application was complete and meets and complies with all of their guidelines. That is hopefully going to come soon. Otherwise, my blood pressure might be dangerous. The award review, which is when they actually score the applications based on their objectives and criteria, and then funding review, which determines how much funding we're going to get. This is a very short timeline. Grant activities are actually planned for March. And that was what the benchmark that we were given. And so they have to move quickly on these. And so we'll update the authority once we hear anything from the FCC.
Of course, when I get up. Well,
Just your presence.
But I guess I did the relay. So the Broadband Advisory Council meeting, which was held in Richmond right after General Assembly, and Gary Wood was there, Rich Schulman was there. Rich Schulman and I sit on the Broadband Advisory Council. I'm going to try to be quick because it's in your slides. The big announcement that's not showing up in the slides is that there is a potential for a budget amendment that would take the line extension customer assistance program to new levels, both from a funding perspective as well as the eligibility. So right now it's for low to moderate income. It could become an open access. So anyone can submit a request as long as they have a quote for service from any one of the participating broadband providers, which include Comcast and Brightspeed. I've got to check with Gary to see why Firefly is not showing up here, but the hope would be we got all of our providers in Albemarle participating, especially if that funding comes through. So that's a really good thing that happened at the Broadband Advisory Council. There's also a long discussion on the railroad crossing issue. The railroad crossing representatives were there and presented a meager, commitment to help solve the problem, but it may take something more than that. So there's a lot of discussions going on, hence the listing of this House bill and Senate bill. There's a lot of support for both these bills. We don't think the railroad people will block it, but it's possible. I mean, I'll just say it the way that I know how to say it. But hopefully it will run through, or the process, and I think Gary was right on. It's just the fact that they know they're under a microscope. We may be seeing improvement just because of that. The big lesson from there is they're just working on an archaic program where it used to be once a year they would get a request for these types of things. Now with all this fiber crossing all the railroads everywhere, it's overwhelming their systems. So, yeah. So the bead, this is where we're going. There's a June 30th number up there. I was more optimistic that it might be in June. So hopefully we'll know a lot more about that as the months proceed. There is a lot of impetus to get bead out to all the states, including Virginia. So we'll see how it happens.
And a key point there, and it's one of the reasons the slide was included, preparing for body for bead funding, the expectation is that body 24, even if the guidelines are published prior to June 30th, which is likely, the structure of body 24 is going to incorporate bead funding. So it might be a circumstance where the initial awards are awarded only to programs that fit in the initial state funding, but the program will be extended to have a second award period once the bead allocations are available. And the bead funding is not tied directly to just working on broadband expansion projects. It includes provisions for improving workforce developments to meet the fiber needs, as well as helping with local government planning. I believe in the next slide. So the planning, the BEAD equity planning grants are actually in play already. I'm sorry, the digital equity planning grants are in play already. DHCD is currently working on their digital opportunity program. And the BEAD planning grant funding is going to come soon, hopefully. And then the last thing that we wanted to cover, we were approached to offer an update to the school board on the activities that we've been doing both as an office and also in coordination with the team at ACPS. We derived the bulk of the presentation that we will be providing them on February 9th from a document I'm handing out now, which was our strategic priorities plan. As we approached the end of our first year, we looked at opportunities to reassess our mission and our goals and objectives, and develop this document to sort of put it on paper and put the thinking down. And I want to say this was not something we were keeping from the authority. Honestly, through September to November, there was a lot on the agenda. And so we did not want to complicate both the development of the authority's strategic plan and the agendas for these meetings with this discussion. But I wanted to run through the slides briefly and just give you guys an overview of what we will be presenting. So we have seen this, we've shown this to you guys before, the big ad. So our mission, adopting the county's mission and adapting it for our purpose. We are ensuring community members of all means have access to adequate and affordable broadband service. The adequate is an addition that we made late last year. And it's to point out that just having a solution might not necessarily be the right solution. And so adequacy is something that needs to be assessed for different cohorts. And it's one of the guiding principles behind the work of the RDEP. Our first year objectives were in the name, establish a plan to achieve universal broadband access and establish an affordability plan. With the Body 22 program, with the Body 22 award, we were able to establish that box has mostly been checked. Our future accessibility work to hit this number is going to focus on the Body 23 award to make sure that those holes are plugged and any other areas that we have now become aware are not going to be funded. And some of that actually has to do with the recent FCC maps. I'm happy to answer questions on that. But since the state's map was provided last year and the FCC's map followed, there have been some areas that are now stated as unserved, which means, and some of these areas were areas where we knew that there was an incumbent claiming them, but they were not actually receiving service. This means that we now have the opportunity to include them. We're going to work to try to get those locations addressed before the body round, because it'd be wonderful for our providers to actually step up and take on these addresses. However, if they're not included ahead of time, we will include them in a Body 24 application. The affordability plan this is focusing not on the federal program, but actually on what we were able to accomplish. We were able to expand, take on the Internet Essentials Partnership Program with the expectation of being able to expand it from just a program for national school lunch participants to incorporate new community partners and trusted partners that can self-certify that their clients are eligible for this benefit. So we're going to be working to expand that a lot in the next year. And then there's ACP Bridge, which we already discussed, which is, again, it's a really big opportunity to fill the gap from $30 to $50 to help people actually afford the monthly broadband costs. Looking into the future, we have some different paradigms. So previously we were looking primarily at accessibility, affordability, and adequacy. As we look to the next 5 to 10 years, we want to start considering some different aspects of this work: digital literacy, digital parity, and digital evolution. Under digital literacy, one definition is an individual's ability to find, evaluate, and communicate information. And this is in a digital context. This covers a lot of ground. It covers device availability, fluency with technology, language barriers, familiarity with tech culture, protecting personal information. All of these things are issues that should be taken into account as we look at new proposals for how to serve the community. And they touch on those questions of access and adequacy and affordability. Digital parity, it takes the same ideas, but it looks at them through 3 different lenses: gender, rural, urban, and socioeconomic status. And it's looking to see correlations between the availability, the affordability, the reliability of broadband access across these different demographics. This is some of the work that is going to be done by the quantitative team at UVA as part of the RDEP work. And it encompasses more than just access, because it's actually asking questions about reliability, resilience in severe weather situations, and cellular broadband coverage, and issues of competition. And these are all issues that we've touched on before, but by using these lenses, we can really propose solutions to tackle them. And then digital evolution. And this is where we are now looking beyond what the changes that we're seeing in the next few years, but instead looking at the changes that we're going to see over the next decade or longer. I think it's fair to say that if 10 years ago we had told our younger selves that we would take most of our meetings through a video call on a high-speed internet connection, that we would see the expectation of gigabit internet in people's homes, we would all think that that was a little absurd. So what does the next 10 years hold for us? And this paradigm, it's about asking the questions. What do we need to equip ourselves with for the future of broadband access? We have 4 objectives on this. None of these I think are a particular surprise. The development of the regional digital equity plan, developing service level metrics, and this is in a land use context, developing parity metrics, and then piloting an open access conduit project. We'd already discussed the regional digital equity plan. For the service level metrics, this is part of the AC 44 process. So we are going to be looking at different land use circumstances and asking leaders in the community what their expectations are over the next 10 to 20 years for their specific broadband needs, and how we can come up with solutions to address those. For parity metrics, we're looking at a similar space, but now we're asking to identify metrics beyond merely access and speeds and bandwidth, but metrics related to, like I said, reliability, competition, and resilience. And then the open access conduit project remains an option that we think is innovative and would give us an opportunity to target specific areas of interest. So once we've identified areas that are lacking in parity, lacking in insufficient and reliable access, we can propose solutions where we are not providing broadband service, but instead we're providing the hard infrastructure that is often a barrier, a cost barrier to expanding broadband service. And that's all I got.
Questions? Go ahead.
Have more time to look at this question.
My apologies. We moved quickly after meeting with the schools team today and felt it appropriate to present this to the authority before we meet with the school board.
I would just say that your concluding sentence to your primary presentation was somewhat humorous when you said that's all I have. Because that seemed like quite a bit. So, on a lighthearted note, I would ask, do we need to add another A to the BA?
Only if you can think of a way to pronounce it.
I still say bow.
But with an extra A, where would you go?
Wow.
Any other questions? All right.
Right, you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, there's 2 things we would like to put on a consent agenda. One, so that we're not taking time to review, and there could be other things that you guys would like to put on that. But I think there's an action that the Broadband Authority would have to take to make these a change in the agenda process. Where the Broadband Authority would have an additional agenda item that says everybody agrees to approve the consent agenda unless someone would like to talk to one of these items. So the first is the financial report. So that would be a consent item. And it removes the financial reporting from the regular agenda and just puts it in the consent. The next would be the quarterly report from the Broadband Authority to the Board of Supervisors. We're also considering just including a Broadband Authority section of what we would propose to be the Broadband Accessibility and Affordability Office's report. So switch things up to where the report is actually coming from BAAO, and it has a section that covers what was accomplished by the Broadband Authority. So I'm putting those out there on the table for consideration. There could be more things that you all would like to add to the consent agenda or stay as we are. So.
Question about that. Presumably, we're providing updates to the Board of Supervisors because we've been tasked with doing so. And so the Board of Supervisors would need to instead request that BOW provide those updates instead. And so it's not really on us to make that decision, but rather to propose that to the Board of Supervisors.
Right.
Is that right?
That's exactly correct.
It'll end up on a consent agenda. for
Yes.
the Board of Supervisors. But yes, you're right. That's a good I dotting T crossing. It seems like in the process of amending our rules to account for this, we'll want to also describe the process by which recurring things get relegated to the consent agenda. Whether it's just a simple motion and we vote, yeah, in the future, let's do this as part of the consent agenda. We'll also want to have a clear standard for, how things are pulled from the consent agenda, that there must be materials presented on each item in advance to the members of the board for the consent agenda, so we can read and know whether we need to pull them or can simply vote on them as they are, or, want to do something else entirely. Richie.
Sir, thank you. So I think it was Director Henry who brought this up at the last meeting. And in response to that, I think there was comment that our bylaws or rules should change. It's our rules of a procedure should change to include a consent agenda in those rules. And so I did draft a resolution that would amend the rules. And I knew today was to provide the board notice that at the next meeting that would be considered if there's going to be a rule change. And so the comments that have been raised today, to some extent, are addressed in that resolution. And I will confess they were stolen directly from the Board of Supervisors rules, because they do have a consent agenda item. I can share that, or I can simply just circulate that to all the members for consideration at the February meeting. But I just wanted to bring you up to date. They're not, the resolution is not in the weeds as Mike has discussed. It's broad, and it just talks about items that would be appropriate for a consent agenda. And it also provides for ways in which a director could move to pull it from the consent agenda. So that's just by way of update.
Thank you, Mr. Deloria. We will look forward to seeing your proposal.
Like to just make a general point that I do appreciate that there has been and should continue to be an evolution of the role of the Broadband Authority relative to the BAO. That originally, Mike, this is a thing you were doing on the side as you were busy running IT for the county, and that we have had a good and healthy shift of the professionalization of broadband within the county staff. Like that is a good and healthy thing. And I think a natural and sensible part of that is finding things like that quarterly report and saying, look, this really should be owned by the broadband office and not by this group of folks. And so I welcome that, as I have long welcomed the eventual uselessness of the Broadband Authority. And I think a part of how that happens is the professionalization of some of what has been done by a resident group, and it is instead turned over to staff. So I'm glad you all have identified these areas in which that trend can continue.
Well said.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on this topic? Okay. Is there any other business that we should consider at this time? Hearing none, I'll move to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.